All right, we're going to dive into the Ravens Week 9 victory over the Denver Broncos here. And I want to start this video off with highlighting the man side of this five-man protection here. You see the center and left side sliding to these three players, and your right guard and right tackle are manned up on the end, and this three technique here. They're fairly wide. And both right tackle and right guard do a good job on their reps. Starting with Faalele, he does a good job of setting inside out of Zach Allen. A new aiming point or thought process I heard for thinking about a relationship to a pass rusher is from tip of the spear, and they were saying that nose to inside ear is a good signifier of whether you are in a good relationship to the pass rusher. So Faalele does a good job there with that nose to inside ear relationship, and then he does a good job landing that right hand and that inside hand as well to get a good fit and to slow down the momentum of that rush from Zach Allen. And then he also does a good job of playing with a good base and being able to redirect off that inside foot here and push Allen out from getting leverage inside. So good job there by Faalele. And then switching over to Rosengarten here, I think Rosengarten does a good job getting to the spot. And one thing I noticed from Rosengarten throughout this game is when his hands land in a position that he doesn't necessarily want them to be in, he's not afraid to deflect the rush with his hands and then reset and try to refit. And he does that throughout the game. It starts right here with this rep, but I think he does a really good job being able to reset his base and his hands to be able to better defend any counters that Cooper would potentially throw at him. So he does a good job here getting to the spot and then stopping the momentum of that speed to power with being able to redirect it with his hands and then resetting and getting into a good spot in relationship to Lamar Jackson and how he is working in the pocket. So they give Lamar some time to go to work here. Good pro out of the two of them and on the slide side, and it ends up being a big play downfield to Nelson Agholor. The Ravens do a good job executing this gap scheme run here, and it ends up being a touchdown with Derrick Henry carrying a few bodies into the end zone. But there's a lot of stuff that's going on this play, and it's fun to break down what ends up happening. So the first thing I want you to notice is when this 5 technique shifts right before the snap into a 4-eye, which was going to shift the angles that the tackle and tight end would traditionally take on a tray block here to the backside linebacker. And then the other thing I want you to notice after that is the nose and the tackle appear to be working some sort of game. It is in the low red, so they're trying to mix up the look a little bit and give the Ravens something that they can't handle to potentially get a TFL. So it looks like the tackle was potentially going to pick the center and then the nose was going to work over the top, something like that, with it ending up being a gap scheme where the center's blocking back. It kind of nullifies that, and then you also get a quick backside fit from this linebacker here. So with all of that happening, the tackle Roger Rosengarten is going to play this 4-eye differently, obviously, than he would have traditionally if he was in a 5 technique. And he does an okay job here of sealing him off in that play side B gap. He tries to rip him over into the B gap, but Franklin Myers is pretty strong, does a good job of kind of fighting that and maintaining his position on that play side C gap. But Rosengarten is able to recover and do just enough that Derrick Henry is able to get by him. So good enough job there by Rosengarten, gets just enough of Franklin Myers, who is an absolute unit up there and hard to move around. And then with that quick backside fit from 55, it shifts who this tight end is going to be working to traditionally in a gap scheme run. You'd think that the tackle and tight end would work to 55 if he'd flow over the top and fit it traditionally how a gap scheme run would be fit, but it looks like 55 is playing Lamar Jackson or thinks he sees something he doesn't, but he fits quickly backside. So the tight end's going to shift to blocking 22, who is a safety here. And he does this because traditionally in a gap scheme, you're going to want to leave two players to account for the kick-out block and the insert, the way the Ravens are running it here. So Ricard's going to kick out number 5, and then McCarty's going to insert for that first play side linebacker here, number 12. And they both do a good job here. McCarty tries to get that positioning of pulling right and then hitting with his right shoulder to create space inside, but 12 does a decent job of spilling it here to the free hitter, who's going to end up being number 2. And the tight end does a good job of getting a good fit on 22 as he works up on that tray block and gets a good enough piece that when you give Derrick Henry that much space, it's usually going to take more than one corner. I know Pat Surtain's a really good player, but it's going to take more than one corner to bring him down. So Henry does a good job with the space that's created. It's not a perfect play by any means by the Ravens here, but they're able to adjust enough to the funky defensive look that the Broncos give them here and execute just enough to score a touchdown. Great job here on the gap scheme run and a big touchdown for the Ravens. I think this is good overall team protection by the Ravens here. They do a good job of picking up games interior-wise, and Ronnie Stanley has a good rep in one-on-one protection here, and it ends up being a really big play. I want to dive deeper into this NT stunt that Linderbaum and Faalele are able to pick up on the right side here. It's the same side of the line where the NT is coming from. Zach Allen is looking to pick the inside shoulder of Faalele, and then Franklin Myers is going to come from this, technically it's a 5 technique, into that A-gap that has been evacuated on the backside. And Faalele and Linderbaum do a solid job, especially Faalele with lagging his hand here, with Zach Allen penetrating that slide side A-gap and attempting to pick the shoulder. Linderbaum also does a good job of pushing Allen over into the B-gap and giving Faalele a chance to reset and pick up the penetrator there. And then Linderbaum, with him trying to pass Allen in front of Faalele, gets a little turned, but does a really good job being athletic and sticking that right leg in the ground and being able to open up and still deflect Franklin Myers when he wheels back onto the looper there. So I think they do a really good job interior-wise picking up that game there. And McCarty does a good job too, having his head on a swivel with him originally sliding to the right and looking at that linebacker pressed on the line of scrimmage there. McCarty then is looking for work and looking for someone to help and is able to get a piece of Franklin Myers there as well. I also think Ronnie Stanley does a good job on this one-on-one rep here. He misses his outside hand initially, but does a good job of still deflecting Cooper up the pocket, and he does a good job of resetting his base here when he gets a little crossed over as he opens up. He does a good job of resetting at the top of the pocket, knowing where Lamar Jackson is and that Cooper's going to want to work back up the pocket. So Stanley does a good job of changing direction there, keeping a strong base, and being able to stay in front of Cooper. So overall, some good stuff on tape here by the Ravens protection-wise, and it ends up keeping a clean pocket, and Lamar's able to make a big play downfield. So good pro there. More strong gap scheme execution here by the Ravens as they're able to pick up a big chunk on the ground here with Derrick Henry. They're working against a traditional under front with this boundary linebacker pressed up on the line of scrimmage. And if you want to go through the assignments from left to right, you have a traditional deuce block between McCarty and Stanley up to the first, second level defender backside, who is number 12 here, as well as a back block on the 2-eye by the center. Faalele is going to pull to insert after Ricard kicks out this end here. Faalele is going to pull to insert for 55, and then Rosengarten is working a gap hinge, sealing off that backside B gap before he works outside to whoever appears to be the most dangerous at that point in time. And the Ravens do a good job of getting just enough done here up front. The blocks aren't executed perfectly. If you look at this deuce block between Stanley and Makari slips the 5 technique with his, or the 4-eye with his shoulder inadvertently, but Stanley does a good job of adjusting, getting 2 feet in the ground, and being able to gain leverage just enough to keep Zach Allen posted in that play side B gap to let Derrick Henry rip off a run. Henry doesn't need that much space to work with to get a big play going. So the deuce block's good. Linderbaum as well. You have this 2-eye trying to cross his face here, but he's able to adjust pretty well. He has a very strong left hand here, catches this 2-eye with his left hand, is able to regain leverage by engaging his hips and pinning him on that backside A-gap just enough that the play is able to get off. So great rep here out of Linderbaum, adjusting to that crossface by the 2-eye. Rosengarten as well, with this linebacker in the boundary pressed up on the line of scrimmage. I don't know if he's expecting a reduction from this 5 technique here, but he gets it and is able to adjust enough to push him into the back block and prevent that 5 technique from kind of wreaking havoc on the backside from the play, and gets just enough done. And then Falele does a great job pulling left and hitting left on that insert block to get that play side linebacker out of the run fit and letting Derrick Henry run up there for a big chunk. Ricard does a good job on the kick out too. Overall, some good execution, especially by the pullers here, and then some good adjustments by some veteran players on this Ravens O-line, Stanley and Linderbaum, being able to adjust to some things going wrong to start, and then being able to make them right for the Ravens, and then allowing them to rip off this run. So great execution here on the gap scheme, and the Ravens are rolling offensively. The Ravens interior 3 does a really great job here on this outside zone scheme play that Derrick Henry's able to carry for around 20 yards. It's a big gash, big explosive play for the Ravens, and I want to highlight some of the work by their interior 3 here, starting with Daniel Falele. It looks like him and Linderbaum are working a play side single to number 55 here, and I want you to notice Falele's left hand, his inside hand, as he takes an angle towards 55 with the leverage being, or with playing against a 2-eye and not having great leverage to the linebacker. Falele can't give that much to Linderbaum to help him reach that 2-eye, but Falele does a great job with his second step and his inside left arm, getting a big stab on that outside shoulder of the 2-eye here, and allowing Linderbaum to run into that space and reach 97 here. Falele does another good job once he stabs, and you can tell it's a good stab by how much the outside shoulder of 97 is opened up there. If you notice there, he is almost completely turned and is angled towards the sideline with his upper body. It's a great stab by Falele, and he does a good job once he gets to the second level, running 55 past the point of attack for Derrick Henry. And then as Linderbaum goes to reach this 2-eye here, he does a good job of getting just enough leverage that 97's not able to shed him and make a tackle. He gets a good fit with his inside arm and is able to drive 97 far enough vertically that he doesn't get enough leverage to be able to tackle Henry there. So good job by Linderbaum just finishing and not letting his guy make the tackle here. And then on the backside, Makari and Stanley have a good backside B block on this 3 technique here. Makari does a good job with that outside left arm, and then does a good job cutting the second level. And with that, he throws the balance of 40 off enough that as Henry cuts it up towards the middle of the hashes, 40's not really able to make a play on Henry there, and it gains the Ravens another sneaky extra 4 or 5 yards there. So overall, some really good execution by the interior 3 here, especially Falele and Linderbaum, and they crease a big zone scheme here and are rolling offensively. more gap scheme by the Ravens here, and they're able to pick up another sizable chunk on first down with some pretty strong pulling and play side blocking here. I want you to take note first of this play side tray by Charlie Kolar and Roger Rosengarten against this 5 technique here. The Ravens, or the Broncos, excuse me, have 5 men on the line of scrimmage here, and this particular defensive play or structure calls for this 5 technique to reduce to the play side B gap, and 12 is going to be responsible for the play side C gap, with this 5th man pressed on the line of scrimmage responsible for the D gap in the run fit. And Rosengarten knows, probably based off of the stance or alignment of this 5 technique, that he's going to try and cross his face and reduce into that play side C gap. So he does a good job of slowing himself down, getting 2 quick feet in the ground, and making contact with that 5 pretty square. And once he squares him up and has him in a good position in that play side C gap or play side B gap, all Charlie Kolar's job to do is clean it up and run straight through the hip of John Franklin Myers. And he does a great job of that here. You watch Rosengarten square him up, and then 88 just runs right through the hip, and it kind of throws him off the path of getting up to that backside linebacker, who eventually is a part of the tackle. But with all that space created from the tray block initially, leaves a huge hole for Justice Hill to run through, as well as a strong kick out and insert block by Ricard and Macari here. Really opens up the gap. There's a little leakage on the backside with the end here playing over the top of that gap hinge by Stanley, but the Ravens are still able to pull off an efficient run here with a strong tray, a good down block by Falele on that shade, and the Ravens are rolling here on both gap and zone schemes, and their offense is having a very productive day. So great execution. The Ravens are running another wide zone variation here, and the play gets a little bottled up due to a lack of horizontal stretch on the end man in the line of scrimmage here. Pat Ricard's block. It's a tough one-on-one block, typically in zone schemes like this, and especially if you're asking a fullback to do it. As good as Ricard is, it's just not an easy block, and he doesn't get as much horizontal stretch as you'd want on a play like this, and number 5 is able to fold back in and make the play. But I do want to highlight some of the strong combination blocks, or the strong combination block between the left tackle and left guard here on this play side. You could call it a play side double here. Ronnie Stanley first does a good job. He has leverage on this 4-eye here, so he's going to play more vertical through the 4-eye. He does a good job of that with his second step going through the midline of 94. If you look at his second step there, and he's able to drive 94 on the angle with Macari gaining ground, filling the space left in by Stanley there, and then he's able to fold back on the lag fit by number 55. And another person I want to highlight here is Tyler Linderbaum. I think he does a really good job reaching this play side shade solo off the snap. He does a good job getting his head across. And one thing I noticed about Linderbaum is he's great with understanding leverage and knowing how to position his body to efficiently move these interior D linemen. And even when he loses, he has a strong ability to recover, and that's definitely present throughout all this tape. And he does a really good job reaching that play side shade there and then driving him up the field vertically. So still a 6-yard gain for the Ravens here. Not a bad play by any stretch of the imagination, but some great combination and front side blocking here on this zone scheme. So the Ravens, this is the last play we're going to go over here, but they had a really good game against the Broncos here, and I was impressed by some of the stuff I saw on film by these Ravens O-linemen.